Okay, good morning, everybody. How many of you were scared to death by Scotty yesterday? Right? Got a few? Yeah? Okay, well, we'll talk a little bit about that as well as we go along. But I thought I'd start out by just sort of recapping this year in recruiting. Um, Things are kind of back to normal, at least from my perspective in Europe and America, and I think maybe in Australia as well. It feels to me more normal, more like it was pre-pandemic, which is an interesting, taken a long time to get to recover from that pandemic to some degree. I think, but there's been a lot of layoffs of recruiters in the U.S. in the tech sector. It's been horrific. Thousands, tens of thousands of recruiters laid off. I was at HR Tech last week in Las Vegas, and I'd say every other person I met was actually looking for a job. They're looking for work. So pretty difficult in the tech sector especially. I see a big shift to hiring more contract and gig workers, temporary workers, because that's really gives the companies the flexibility that they want to manage their needs and to find the specific skills that they're looking for that they may not need on a permanent basis. So I kind of look at the future of permanent employment and wonder what that's going to look like. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And obviously AI is everywhere. There wasn't a single vendor at HR Tech that did not talk about or have AI in their name of their company or in their product offering. And I'll talk more about that as well. So the growth areas in Australia right now in terms of the job market are really focused in healthcare. That's really the growth area. It's the same growth area in the US as well. That's there. Professional, scientific, and technical, again, highly skilled professionals with fairly narrow skill sets like data science or whatever. Education and training, shortage of teachers almost everywhere these days. And it's hard to attract teachers because they don't get paid very well compared to the tech industry. So that's a real challenge there. And construction, which has been booming, and it's also booming in the US because Joe Biden passed a bill that's allowing us to rebuild highways and bridges, so there's lots of new infrastructure work going on there. So it's an interesting time in this, and you see tech is not there. And if I'd presented this last year, it was all tech, 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 okay? So it's very, very different space that we're kind of moving into. And while tech remains critical, there was tremendous over-hiring during the pandemic, and I think we're sort of recovering and re-leveling what's going on from that period of time. Twists, things that are changing and evolving. This profession that we're in is undergoing massive change. If you heard my talk last year, I talked a lot about this. We're really reinventing what recruiting is all about. It's not going to look anything like it looks today. It's not going to disappear. There's still going to be people doing recruitment-related activities, but a lot of the specific things that we typically think about recruiters doing are going to go away or become automated or change. There's no question about that. There's going to be a lot more automation, a lot more AI. I think you're going to see the whole front end of the process highly automated and sort of the back end of the process highly automated. And there'll be some room in the middle, but even that will be augmented with technology and eased by technology. I think there's going to be very few entry and mid-level recruiting jobs over the next few years. I think we're just going to see we just don't need this many people entering the profession. AI is going to take over a lot of what we do. I think functions with 10 recruiters may end up needing 2 or 3, and they're going to have a different skill set than they have today. So I think there's no doubt about that. I think every profession is going through this. I don't know if any of you probably don't really follow the U.S. job market that much, but the longshoremen on the east coast of America is threatened to go on. They actually did go on strike. Unless the company would absolutely promise they would not introduce any automation for 5 years. And of course the company has said, let's talk about it in January. So, it's inevitable. This technology is going to come everywhere. I've seen automated trucks delivering goods around the U.S. now. In Texas, they're legal now to have the big semi-trucks delivering goods, no drivers. San Francisco has driverless taxis everywhere now. So, all of this automation is it's snowballing, and I have a feeling we're sort of sleepwalking into this future without really fully appreciating the scope of it, the depth of it, and the speed that it's moving. And that's really what's scary. It's so fast. Most technology changes take a little bit of time and we kind of get to adjust to it. This is not giving us much time to adjust. It's really rapid. Okay? So employment, the tech sector, we already talked about this. Retail is being decimated in America. Macy's is closing hundreds of stores. I just read that over 10,000 bank branches are closing in the United States this year because everybody's using automated banking and they don't need to go to a physical bank anymore. So I mean, this is just changing these kind of things. So employment in those industries is definitely going to be changing. The skills that people are looking for, those specific skills, are the AI, cybersecurity, the really specialized, narrow skill sets that very few people have, which is why we say there's a talent shortage, and we're scouring the bushes for this scarce talent that probably doesn't exist, but is picking up speed. People are beginning to learn these skills. And there will be growth in aged care, health care. There'll be growth in the renewable energy space. Those areas will grow and have more employment. Other areas will probably suffer quite a bit from employment. Big push back to the office. I mean, this is just huge. All of these companies I list here have now mandated everybody either immediately or by January 1st back in the office full time. So this is pretty significant deal. You mean they can't hear me? Okay. All right. So this push back to the office, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later in our Q&A session, but this has been coming for a long time, and I think that someone yesterday said someone had predicted that everyone would be back. I think KPMG said everybody will be back in the office by 2026 or 2027 or something like that. I think that's probably pretty much true. The number of jobs that are fully remote is really small. I mean, we think about it, it's only like 10% of the workforce that is fully remote or could be fully remote. Okay? And so even though people say they can work remotely, companies don't necessarily agree with that. A lot of reasons for that we'll dig into in a little bit later on. Employee well-being is a topic now, huge topic in organizations because of turnover rates, because of a lot of the younger employees, which is interesting. People in my age bracket and a little bit younger don't focus so much on this, but younger people are really concerned about how they're treated, how they're appreciated, how the senior leadership talks to them, how they bring issues to them. So this whole mental health support, work-life balance becomes another conversation that a few years ago we talked a lot about work-life balance, then it disappeared. Now it's sort of coming back on the table again. Employee engagement has been a hot topic for everybody now. Engagement surveys, and these are just getting more and more important. And employee development, which we sadly don't have enough of, is being demanded by young people. We need more development. We need more training in order to move internally, because if we don't have training, how can we move to a new job internally? Okay? And then how am I supposed to get this training if you don't provide it for me? So these are companies are struggling with dealing with this, so the focus is moving away from traditional qualifications to skills. How many of you are focusing on finding skills or recruiting for skills? Really? It's a big push. I know lots of consultants here in Australia are talking a lot about this. LinkedIn data shows there's a 25% increase in recruiters just searching for specific skills as opposed to experience or other qualifications. But there's a big downside to this skill movement. And the downside is really short-termism. If I hire somebody with a PHP programming skill, how long is that skill going to be relevant? Okay? How long are these short-term skills going to really be viable? So it's a fear and a concern that we're encouraging people to study and get certain skills that aren't going to be enduring, that aren't going to last. Okay? Skills get obsolete so quickly that even if you're an engineer, we say the half-life of an engineer We used to say when I was in industry, the half-life of an engineer was 5 years. Now they say the half-life of an engineer is 2 years. Before whatever you learned in uni is completely obsolete, except for the fundamentals. You know, the math and the physics don't change. But all the specific skills change all the time. And if you're not constantly learning, you're obsolete. How do we measure skills? That's a real question. What is a skill? You know, people are asking this question now. How do we define what a skill is? And I work with a lot of IO psychologists, and they're all struggling with how do we measure and define this in an unbiased way. It's really difficult even to know what a skill is. So there's a whole lots of issues around this whole skill movement that are important and really significant, but it seems to be a fad right now for recruiters to focus more on skills than on other qualifications. So the use of AI, I mean, I don't even need to probably tell you any of this. It's pretty much everything in the expo floor down there is talking about one of these things or some of these things. It's the automation is just coming in quickly. Cole's presentation yesterday, if you saw that, they're talking about how they're using predictive analytics inside. Really powerful stuff, really, really useful stuff to help them do much more effective hiring and retention, okay? And of course, we have a lot of ethical concerns about AI and the bias within AI, but you know, my contention to you is that we're more biased than AI is, all right? And they're working hard to get rid of the bias in AI, and no matter how hard we work to get rid of our bias, we can't get rid of our bias. It's built into us, okay? So I'm not that worried about that. I think we'll fix that. The hallucinations that we hear about in ChatGTP and all, that's already going away. So I think these are all just temporary glitches that will be gone very soon. I'd much rather be assessed by AI than by one of you. So where are we going? You know, what are the things that are going on? Let's just talk about this a little bit more about AI because it's such an important topic. And I'm not going to read all of these. You can take a look at this. But I mean, when you look at the numbers of what's going on in AI, it's pretty amazing. The amount of energy, the amount of money, the amount of focus that's going into this. If you are a vendor of any sort of a recruitment product, if you don't have a team working in some sort of AI, you're pretty much probably not going to be around. It's just absolutely a critical foundation piece. If we just look at the numbers of what's going on, the growth of AI, it's growing at 7% a year, and that's incredibly fast. Okay, it's 65% of recruiters use some form of AI in their work. Even if all you're doing is using ChatGTP or whatever, you're using some kind of AI in your work. And just imagine if that increases, to the point of automating our profession. I mean, it's happening. And so we're going to have to learn some new skills and capabilities, okay? But AI is challenging some really common assumptions that we all make in recruiting. And these are things that most of us really hold pretty dear to our heart. Number one is that recruiting must be led by humans. We pretty much all have that assumption. It's a bad assumption. I don't think recruiting needs to be led by humans. I think most recruiting can be certainly led by these artificial tools. The feedback from candidates is very positive about using these tools. So, you may not agree with me on this, and I'm putting this out here to be contentious, but I really don't think it needs to be led by humans anymore. Okay? Candidates want to talk to humans. I think that's not true at all. Most candidates would much rather talk to Paradox or ChatGTP or any one of the other, or Scotty or any of the other tools that are out there. These are, I think, the future of recruiting. 24/7, give me quick answers. I don't have to wait for people to get back to me, so forth. And so there's so many reasons why they like to use ChatGTP, okay? Or any other chatbot to do this. Human intuition is critical for candidate screening. Human intuition is bias, right? It's just plain bias. It's just plain prejudice. So I think this is our worst assumption of all, is this one. If you really want to hire the best people, you're going to look at very specific qualities, traits, characteristics. You're going to use predictive analytics and data analytics to really understand, like Coles and others are doing, and you'll be much more effective at what you're doing than trying to say, oh, I think you'll be a pretty good hire, or I like her or him better than that one. That's just plain bias. Okay? And the last one, the traditional resume is essential. You don't even need one anymore. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, if you're out there on Instagram or TikTok or any of the other things, I can get everything I need to know about you from them. I don't really need your CV. What's that going to do for me? Not much at all. Okay. So I think this is one of these assumptions are just sort of, I think, significantly challenged by AI and by the amount of internet presence that we all have today. So where are we going? What do I see coming? Far more talented workers than jobs. This is a huge topic. We have a shortage of jobs. We have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people with tertiary education, meaning beyond high school, that can't find a job that matches their skill set or matches their abilities. So they end up doing jobs that a much lower qualified person could do because there isn't a job for them to do. Okay? You graduate from uni, our old theory historically was go to uni, get a degree, get a good job. That's totally not true anymore. You go to uni and then spend months or years looking for a good job, unless you happen to have majored in one of those narrow little specialty fields that somebody's looking for right now. Now, obviously, that probably doesn't apply to doctors or lawyers or some kinds of engineers, but in general, there's a huge shortage of jobs. There's a new book out from Oxford called The Death of Human Capital. Excellent book, and it talks in depth about this whole issue. This is a global problem all over the world, and the whole thesis that we based employment on historically, governments, supporting, subsidizing education, encouraging people to go to school, teachers teaching their kids to go to school, has probably been doing them a big disservice for the last decade because the jobs just aren't there. Yeah? And we're not really sure what to do about that. Nobody seems to really have a good answer yet about how to deal with that. Right now, the only people that find it easy to get a job are those people with very specific skills that I talked about before. I'm a data scientist, I'm a, whatever it is, I can probably find a job without much trouble. But if I just have a degree in political science or history or whatever, good luck, good luck. In Australia, there's far more talented workers than jobs. This is just the tertiary education in Australia. Just look, in the early 1990s, 8% of the people in Australia had some sort of tertiary education. Today, it's practically everybody, It's amazing. And this is because we've pushed college and pushed going to get some additional education, but we haven't been able to increase the jobs available. So you get lots and lots of people with lots of skill, lots of abilities, and they can't find work that's meaningful or pays them what they were promised they would earn if they got this degree. AI is personalizing recruiting tremendously. This is back to that candidate thing. This is just going to increase significantly. I think every candidate is going to be screened by AI within the next year, pretty much. There's really no way humans can scale to screen the number of applicants that we're getting for most jobs. Why are we getting so many applicants for every job? In America, some jobs get thousands of applicants for one job. Why? Because of what I just talked about. We don't have enough jobs. And so everybody's applying for the jobs that don't exist, and they're just hoping I'm going to be lucky and be the one that gets that job. So we've got a real challenge here, and AI is the only thing that's going to be able to screen that, because none of us are going to have the ability to deal with those hundreds and thousands of applicants for a job. And even if we try to do that, we're not going to be able to pick the best ones or the good ones unless we have data to do that, and good data science behind that. Okay? Fluid workforce, talent ecosystems, we're looking at far more self-employment, far more involvement of a gig workforce. So I think most recruiters in the corporate world that I've worked with, they're really only looking for permanent people. That's pretty much what they're focused on. Full-time, permanent jobs, maybe some occasionally have some of the others, but a lot of contingent work is hired through purchasing or payroll or procurement. It has nothing to do with recruiting. I think that's really a mistake. I think the only way you're going to find those really narrowly skilled, hard to find data scientists who don't want to work full-time, but want to be on a contract or want to have a specific project to work on, you're going to have different ways of finding and recruiting and retaining those kinds of people. You're going to have to look at this much larger workforce that's out there. Also, as we age and we have more people retiring, we're going to have to look at that workforce to supplement what we need as well. The value of social media, I think social media is probably pretty much gone in terms of recruiting. We've got tons of privacy concerns and regulations now about how you can actually use TikTok and some of these things. The US is trying to ban TikTok. Facebook is putting huge obstacles into being able to use Facebook for recruiting because of privacy and data and regulations. The new EU AI Act is pretty onerous, if you've read that act, of what they require vendors to do, and it really makes using social media almost impossible for recruiting. Some of the technology vendors that are scraping certain places to get people, that's going to be illegal or highly regulated in the near future. So I think that you're going to find that these specialized platforms, professional networks, are really going to replace a lot of the social media that we're using today for recruiting. And it's already happening. Companies like HireEZ or SeekOut and some of these others are far more effective than trying to use social media to find people or attract people. Social media may have some role in marketing or promoting, but it's probably not going to be a source of candidates for the future. I think the rise of AI agents is the most interesting thing. Scotty is an AI agent, basically. These AI agents are AI tools that combine multiple functions into one tool. So for example, I envision within the next year or two, a hiring manager could go to their computer, log in, and say, I need to hire whatever. And the AI agent would say, here's an old job description similar to what you're looking for. Let's revise it. Here's some suggestions on how you might revise that based on data that I've accumulated. No human involved. It's all done by the AI. The hiring manager is going to okay that. It's going to post that in the most effective place to find that person or develop a marketing campaign for that automatically. Or it's going to already search the internet and find 3 people and say, within a few minutes, here are 3 people for you to look at. I've already screened them and I highly recommend these 3 people. That's going to happen. That can happen right now, today. It can happen. So if you think about sourcing, finding candidates, writing job descriptions, all that, it's all going to be automated. It's all going to be automated. And by using data to do that, it's going to be far more effective, far more useful than whatever we're currently doing today. It's going to do screening, can do levels of assessment. Doesn't mean that the hiring manager isn't going to interview them or talk to them. They probably will, but that whole heavy front-end piece is going to be automated and done. And that's reality, okay? It's happening. And blockchain is big. Anybody here using blockchain at all in recruiting? Yeah, okay, a couple of people raised their hand. All right, blockchain was just an HR tech. I don't know if you remember, but maybe 5 years ago, blockchain was hot topic. Everybody was talking about it. And then it just sort of disappeared off the face of the earth, except for cryptocurrency, all right? But outside of the world of cryptocurrency, the beauty of blockchain, it can verify all your credentials. It can verify your work history. It can verify your college degrees, your certificates, and so forth. And it's in a secure, unchangeable place, okay? So when you put something in the blockchain, it's there forever, and it can never be removed from the blockchain. And so if I want to verify your degree, I want to verify any of your credentials, I can just go to the blockchain and get access. In Australia, I believe it's the APII, which is the big one here in Australia, doing it specifically for recruiting. And MIT, Harvard, many universities are already putting the degrees into the blockchain. And you can start adding your own credentials, your own work history, your performance, anything you want to put, you can put in there and it's there forever. And any employer with your permission can access that and determine if they want to, if you have the right credentials for the job. So the blockchain is going to continue to grow. You're going to see it not only in recruiting, you're going to see it in many, many other things. But it's a way to actually guarantee the security and verify the validity of anything that you want secured and verified. And that's coming. These companies are just springing up. All of these are specific to recruiting. And they're all, a couple of them are HR tech, and many of them have a variety of solutions in the blockchain. So that's, I think, a pretty interesting prediction. And my wild card prediction is this: holographs are coming. If you've seen anything from Google or Meta recently, where you wear those glasses or whatever, I can imagine that you can actually have a holographic virtual environments where you could actually test out a candidate's ability to do a certain job or run through simulations and discussions. I already had this a few years ago. I think someone from BHP was demonstrating one that they had for going into the coal mines with virtual reality. I think you're just going to see this expanding tremendously over the next few years, as you'll be able to try out different roles. And a candidate might be able to do this without actually applying for a job. They might go to your career site or a site and say, but I wonder how I'd be in this job. And they could actually try it out for themselves before they apply for the job to see if they fit that role. So many interesting applications of this that I think are going to come. I think you're going to see this starting sometime next year. Okay. So what are you going to do? Yeah. Now, this is the big thing. I mean, I believe there is a legitimate role for us in recruiting. But as I said, it's different. I think I've got this 8 stages of recruiter evolution. It's in my book, the whole chapter on this. But I think we're going through a bunch of steps. We're about number 3 right now. And we've got a long way to go to get to the top. Stage number 8 at the top is what I just talked about, where the hiring manager, it's all automated, okay? So how are we going to get up there, and what are the roles, the different roles of recruiters? And I'll just touch on a couple. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can take a picture of this. You'll get a copy of this. You can pick up my book, or you can. So here are the things that I think you'll be able to do. Number 1 is relationship building will still be critical. That's not going to go away. We still need to build relationships with people. We need to get them interested in our company and our job. And AI can help to that to some degree. It can augment this, but nothing replaces, again, the human connection and the experience there. So that's an important role. Coaching and advocacy for candidates, helping them understand, helping them work through the AI, helping them maybe being more of a coach to them about their career, about what they might want to do. Very different than interviewing them for a job. This is much more about a coaching and advising kind of a role for recruiters when people come into your organization, okay? Strategic talent advisory, really providing serious advice to leadership about the job market, about what's going on out there, about what skills are trending, digging more into their needs, what their needs are, and how can we meet that need either through development or recruitment. It's a much more sophisticated and strategic role of looking at the whole labor situation that organization is in, and what is the best way to solve their needs. That's really, I think, the key. And complex assessment and decision making. It's working with those, senior execs or people that are difficult to close to get commitment to your company. The ones that AI didn't find or didn't communicate with effectively. It's going to be dealing with those exceptional cases. So in some ways, it's kind of back to recruiting when I started. This is kind of what we did. We didn't have any computers or technology. And the way you found people was going to restaurants and conferences like this and talking to people and building a relationship. And I think we're going to kind of go back to that again. And the AI will take care of all the traditional stuff in between. All that administrivia will all be handled by AI. But there's still, I think, a definite role for us. So I think the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, which is what Franklin Roosevelt told America in the Great Depression. But I think it's what anybody here that's afraid of the future, what you're really afraid of is your own fear. So we have to go out and challenge new territories, have to go out and make new learnings, gain new skills, experiment with new things, and don't be afraid to give up the old skills, interviewing, or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to give those up and learn something new and take on new challenges. So thanks very much.
Standing. Thanks, Kevin. Come on, yeah. Hi, everybody. Well, you guys are going to keep me on my toes. There's a lot of questions coming through. I'm going to try and cluster them up for you, I think, Kevin. I think you might have answered this one, but the question that has the most votes is, given the pace of change and uncertainty about what's going to be, what are the tips that you can give for teams to be most successful? I think you might have just handled some of
I
that.
think I maybe handle some of that. I think again, it's figuring out what when you look at an AI tool, when you look at any of these tools in the expo or anywhere else, what can't it do? What is it not able to do? Whatever it's not able to do, that's what you do. So you have to be smart enough to figure it out. Okay, it's not very good at X or Y. How's it going to go? How is it going to find or talk to this kind of a person? How is it going to deal with this kind of a situation? Those are the opportunities that you have to deal with those kind of things, to figure out little areas where AI is weak or inadequate or not even able to do it at all. And that's the sweet spot for all of us in this profession to figure out that's what we can do. Like I said, don't be afraid to give up these old skills that are very comfortable but are not useful anymore, and figure out and get some new skills that are useful.
Wonderful, thank you. I think this is a question from me, and I think it's quite a few people have asked this, and it's quite a dichotomy for a lot of businesses. So the return to office. What are the potential risks and impacts from a attraction and engagement perspective, productivity, well-being?
Well, I mean,
stop at that because there's a few to go on there.
We've obviously got this sort of thing that during the pandemic, I work from home. I love to work from home. I've arranged my whole life around this, and I don't want to go back to the office. And if you're going to make me go back to the office, I'm going to quit. Right? That's what I'm hearing all over the place.
Yep.
I think it's more of a threat than a reality. Okay? Because when you have to go back to the office, if you like your job, like your career, you're probably going to end up figuring out how can I go back to the office. There's a lot of benefits to going back to the office. Okay? I think you heard some of them yesterday, if you were here for one session. We're not working remotely. It's very hard to help younger, new entrants to the workforce learn anything. How do you learn what it's like to work in the company? How do you learn the accumulated knowledge that exists inside your company when you're sitting behind a computer screen at home? You can't. You learn that stuff by going to lunch with somebody, talking to somebody, the scuttlebutt, the rumors. That's how we learn stuff, okay? We learn that informally as we work with people within the company. So we're not able to really develop or help new entrants to our company learn effectively. It's the way that we convey information. If you want to move internally, you're not going to get a job moving internally when you're sitting at home behind a computer. You move internally because you find opportunities, you talk to people, you hear somebody says, hey, did you know so-and-so has an opening? You don't do that on the internet, okay? You don't do that on Zoom. You do that when you're in the office, when you're talking with people, and you say, oh, gee, there's an opportunity over there. I never thought about that. Let me go see if I can find out about that. So, I mean, there's so many benefits of that, just the socialization. There's a huge amount of depression right now in the U.S. Lots of people working from home are taking, various pills to boost up their morale. Suicide rates have gone up. So working from home isn't all the great panacea. It's great maybe if you've got a healthy, young, happy family, maybe it's fine. But what if you're a single person and you never see anybody? You sit in your office, or you sit in your room all day at home working remotely. You never talk to anybody, you never see anybody. Not healthy.
I think your opening comment around we've gone back to pre-pandemic life and work. Is it right to argue that work will never be pre-pandemic because it's a one-size-fits-one scenario rather than homogenizing how people work, do you think?
I don't know. I think that, quite honestly, most people like to socialize and be with other people and like to get out. There'll always be a certain number, like I said, about 10% of jobs that are fully remote, and people are happy doing that, and that's good. But how many jobs can you do that with? Programming, maybe some writing, not much. It's not many things you can do that way.
I think there's no black and white answer is what we're saying here, folks, really.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Yep. This is a spicy one. So we as people in our talent industry and the work that we do, we need to embrace the automation of AI and technology to be smarter, more efficient, and remove bias. Take it from a candidate perspective in their hiring or in their recruitment journey, their application. There are tools out there that help them write their profile, their CV, generate well-worded application letters or whatever the process is, assessment tools that they can undertake. do we want our candidates and applicants to demonstrate that capability, or are we a bit scared that we're going to be having ghost people enter the application process and we actually don't know who they are?
But there's been a whole lot of discussion about this whole thing. There's a whole new, I don't know what the right word exactly is, where candidates are actually faking everything. They're not really real candidates. You may end up hiring an avatar that never shows up. So how do I know that whoever applied is actually a human being? How do I know it wasn't an AI agent that was applying for this job? When you talk to candidates, generally they're very positive about using a chatbot, using the online tools that we have already for engagement. I think the tools are going to get more sophisticated in determining whether you're a real human or not. Okay, I think right now many of the tools we have are pretty assuming that everybody's really a human, but we'll start building checks in there. Just like when I log into some sites now, it says verifying, and I think we're going to have to do that in recruiting as well, verifying you're a human. The credential piece will hopefully get verified by the blockchain more and more. We're going to be able to access verified data in the blockchain for candidates. So them being able to fake their qualifications is probably not going to be possible. And we're not eliminating the human contact. At some point, they're going to physically show up and somebody's going to talk to them. So at that point, you can do that sort of that final screen. So I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Nadine, O'Regan, thank you for using ChatGPT to ask a question. The question is, using Kevin's content, I put it in ChatGPT. As AI becomes more integrated into recruiting, what unexpected challenges or ethical dilemmas do you foresee our TA leaders facing now and in the future? How do they prepare for this?
Oh, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's certainly ethical issues around the whole bias piece, whether AI is biased or not, whether we're biased or not. Ethical issues about, the EU Act, the EU AI Act is pretty interesting in that it classifies pretty much all recruiting systems as what they call high risk. And a high risk, there's only one category above high risk, which is you can't use it at all. Okay, so totally banned or high risk. Every single application or tool pretty much fits into that high risk category in recruiting. It's there because of privacy, because of candidates not necessarily having control over their data, which are really big issues, around you not necessarily opting in to have your data shared or used for data analytics. It's a real ethical dilemma. If you give me your data, if I have your CV and knowledge about you, do I have the right to use that data, even if it's made anonymous, even if I don't associate with you anymore? Do I have right to use that data to help train my LLM? Do I have the right to use that data to make decisions about other people like you in the organization? So if I'm looking at everybody that applies and everybody that I hire and they're really good employees, then I say, if you don't have these qualifications, you're going to get excluded. I'm not going to look at you anymore. So there's a lot of ethical dilemmas about, is that okay or not? How much control should we give you? The EU AI Act says you have 100% total control over your data. And if you say, take my data out and never use it, then the company's obligated to allow you to do that. How that's going to work technically, nobody knows. Because right now, there's no way to do that. Because the data is anonymous, and I don't know how to associate that piece of data with you to take that out of there. So there's all sorts of issues that are going to come up. We're going to have to struggle our way through this. Legal, regulatory, ethical, all kinds of issues. Some we haven't even thought of yet. But they're big and they're real.
Let's have a chat about skills. I think everyone talks about skills-based hiring, skills-based workforce. I've been in the recruitment industry 25 years. You've been in a little bit longer.
Almost 25.
And I was talking to some colleagues of mine yesterday here and even in the last couple of weeks. It's not new to hire for skills, right? So if you worked in recruitment land 20 odd years ago, you had a system that you tagged people against the skills that they had and the machine matched them, and then you helped match the supply and demand of work to the role that you're trying to fill. So I don't think that's changed. The automation has accelerated, obviously. But the challenge that I see organisations having is not so much on the hiring journey, but internal mobility, career pathing, and so on. When we were talking about this morning, Kevin, what are the key things that you think companies need to get right as a fundamental when they start that journey of skills-based organisations?
I touched on it briefly earlier, but we've, back in the 70s and 80s, and even before that, almost every large company, and even many smaller companies, had very significant internal development functions, training and development functions, where there were very specific training. I mean, IBM had entire multi-story buildings devoted just to employee training and development. Motorola, all these companies had massive efforts in employee development, and they pretty much only hired new graduates and trained them, and everybody in the company worked their way up by getting trained and developed, and they had nothing but internal mobility. Okay, that was what it was, okay? In the 80s, we had this movement to shareholder value, and as soon as companies started focusing on share price, one of the very first things that went out the door was learning and development. And they were either reduced or eliminated or shrunk. And we said, you're responsible for your own development. If you want to get another job, you've got to go out and go to uni or go take a course somewhere, but not my job to train you, it's your job. Of course, most of us have no idea what we need to be trained on, and there's nowhere to get that specific training that's proprietary to your company outside the company, right? So that's why we've got a talent shortage. That's why we keep screaming, and that's why internal mobility is a nice concept. But how can I move if I don't have any skills or training to do that? And if you're not going to develop me inside the company to do this, then what am I going to do? And that's a big part of our problem right now. We need to re-establish learning and development inside organizations. We need to recreate that, rebuild that, so that we can begin to actually make internal mobility real. But right now, how many of you could move to another job tomorrow in your company? Do you have the skills to do that? And probably many of us would say, I don't know. Number one, I don't know what to move to do. Number two, I don't know what the qualifications are for that. And number three, I don't have them and I don't know how to get them. So that's the real dilemma right now. Yep.
We've only got a few minutes left, so I've got loads of questions, and I think we might share these with Kevin. He can come back to people if they'd like to. You term the fluid workforce. I call it the invisible workforce. Organisations are needing to access more and more non-traditional employee relationships and engagements. I personally don't see that organisations are set up to do that well.
No, they're not.
It's fraught with risk and opportunity. Where are you seeing people like the professionals in this room? What sectors or what countries are you seeing that real holistic view of talent and talent leaders, talent executives and CPOs having that full lens and bringing that workforce together?
I mean, I don't think there's a lot of commitment or interest at the senior most levels about. They don't even know this workforce that exists, or they're not really consciously aware of it. And recruiters, like I said earlier, mostly are only focused on full-time permanent positions. So I think as a profession, again, we need to expand that charter, our own charter. We need to try talking to hiring managers about, do you really need a full-time permanent person for this job? Could we hire a contractor or a consultant or a temporary worker for this job? We need to have those conversations with hiring managers. It's a much more valuable role for recruiters than sourcing or screening up front. This is a real, where you're building a relationship with a hiring manager and having a real conversation with them about what their real needs are. And then you've got to have the ability to go out to that invisible workforce or that contingent workforce out there and be able to tap into the right people. So you need to have the talent, the pipelines, and the access to those sources of candidates, when again, we probably don't have that for the most part. So I mean, we need to build a much bigger involved ecosystem for talent than we've had. I've been pushing this for the last 3 or 4 years, but I don't see a lot of companies really doing it.
I agree.
Very little going on there. It's still pretty much full-time permanent jobs, and that's pretty much it. But there's a lot more out there, and there's a lot more skills out there that we need, and a lot of those skills don't want to work full-time permanent positions. They don't want that. They want to have three projects in 3 different companies. And when I talk to CHROs or the legal department, they usually have a heart attack over that, because I don't want you working for a competitor or another company, right? Even though consultants do that all the time, been doing it for hundreds of years, but I don't want this person doing that. So there's a lot of inconsistency and poor thinking, I think, around this. And one of our roles is to help straighten out that thinking, I think. Yeah.
So did I just hear you say everyone here should come to the ATC Contingent Workforce Conference next year?
Yeah, come to that. Yeah.
Excellent.
Bring your protest cards.
Good stuff. No, don't do that. Not at all. Not at all. Could everyone join me in thanking Kevin this morning?
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks. Good job.
Thank you.